Good morning, I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion on this hump day. It's Wednesday and an interesting start to the week, especially if you go back to last Friday and add that in to Monday. That 1,000-point loss sure did feel pretty crummy. And then suddenly we come back on Tuesday. We start off very strong in the pre-markets. We get a little bit of a pause. Then we start skyrocketing. And the rest of the day, around midday, we held on to those gains for the most part until the final half hour or so of the day. We gave back a little bit on the Dow. We gave back about 100 points. We still finished up 550 points to the upside. NASDAQ, sort of a similar story, gave up about 50 points late, but still closed up 225 points to the upside. So a great rally off of what looked like maybe a tailspin that we were going into with all the talk and all the conversation about this virus and the latest on the Delta and this variant and what's that going to do, and a lot of those concerns, and some of them very valid, but the markets were able to shake that off, and suddenly the focus got back on the markets and less about exactly what we were talking about, that Delta variant. So, variant, 10-year, it was beneath 1.2. We actually got back and up over 1.2. That was interesting. The rally from 66 on oil, and we were talking about this. It wasn't too long ago, not more than a week and 2 weeks ago. We had a crude at 77, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves at 66. Well, we raised up a little bit off of that yesterday, finished a little over 67, 67.30 on crude. So started to see a little bit of that rally, of course, with the 10-year, started a little bit of a rally with crude. Bitcoin, on the other hand, had been holding up pretty decent, then started to get smacked around a little bit, and yesterday closed under 30,000. A little bit different look today, but we'll get into that in just a minute. Volatility index, always something that we're keeping a very close eye on. We've talked about how we get up towards 20, we get into the 20s, and how long can we sustain up in that area? Well, this is the good answer, because yesterday we hit around 23, and then by the end of the day, we actually did close underneath that 20 level. So we were up there for a very brief day or so and finished the day right around 1970. Volumes did come back significantly from where we were, but nonetheless, 35 million contracts, we'll take that. That's a very nice day once again, but we were getting a little spoiled with the 40 million plus categories that we were starting to see in terms of the markets themselves. The derivatives markets have remained extremely liquid, extremely active. Matter of fact, what I like a lot about what we are seeing is the spread across so many different names. It's not just isolated to those top three names. Here's a good example of that. Apple, 1.5 million. So that was well off of where it had been. Then you take a look at AMC, about 1 million contracts. We look over at Tesla, 800,000 contracts. You get the idea. That top three, we were seeing 4, 5, 6 names over 1 million plus contracts. And now we've kind of eased back. And yet we had 35 million contracts trading. Gives you a little idea of how that's being distributed across much more, many more names for sure. So leadership yesterday to the upside. What was really driving us to the upside? Industrials, financials, technology, healthcare, all of which started the day pretty strong, accelerated throughout the day, and then that's where we finished up by the end of the day. Really some very, very nice gains. Also interesting because all this back and forth about these variants and what's going on with COVID, all that type of thing, cruise lines stood out for me. You look over at Carnival Cruise, you look over at Norwegian, you look over at Royal Caribbean, all of which 7% or more to the upside yesterday. Then you look at the airlines, and you see American, you see Southwest moving to the upside, 6% or more. Even some of that stay at home, which makes this very, very interesting because you had Peloton, you had DocuSign. Matter of fact, we had DocuSign for some unusual. Marriott, a lot of these various names that just showing us that it was a very broad swath of what was really participating yesterday. As a matter of fact, a really nice, strong bounce back day for Apple as well. Apple was up about 2.6%. So across the board, just it seemed like and felt like every sector contributing to this move to the upside yesterday. We're following it up very nicely today, as a matter of fact, isn't it? Pre-market, Dow up about 140 points. NASDAQ, not so much, not as much participation, but that started to accelerate once we got into the opening bell in this first hour of trade. Last I looked, we were up about 75. We started pulling back right before we came on air, about 55 points to the upside. As a matter of fact, we were up 270 or more on the Dow. Now I just took a quick peek. We're up about 210, 220, somewhere in that range. Still a very, very nice day after that monster day that we had yesterday. The volatility index, not even in the 20s, not even in the 19s. Actually, we've dropped down. Last I looked, we were trading about 18 and a half. So that opportunity zone of buying stocks, selling calls, great opportunity to take a look at how much these stocks have really moved to the upside and volatility coming in. So if you were lucky enough to find some of those names out there that you were looking for on the shopping lists, that's the kind of trading that we were trying to look for yesterday. We've seen so much bullish option activity. As a matter of fact, the option activity today has been just absolutely extraordinary. Just in the first hour of trade, the number of unusual option hits that we have seen is really pretty extraordinary. Crude up again, up more than 2%, getting closer and closer, 68.50. See if we can push back up over that 70 level in the not too distant future. The 10-year still continues to move a little bit more and more to the upside. It was close to 1.25%. Bitcoin rallying off, being underneath 30,000 to 31,500. So getting back up closer and closer to that range that Bitcoin had been in for a while until it took this couple of shots to the chin over the last few trading sessions. So leading today, energy absolutely ripping to the upside. We talked about crude and this bounce from 66 to over 68. Nice move on energy, really to the upside, up more than 3%. You had financials that were ripping as well. Started up about 1.5%, now over 2% to the upside. Industrials, materials, semiconductors as well, up about 2% today. So some nice participation. Semis really helping drive a lot of what we were seeing on the NASDAQ today in terms of that upside move. Chipotle ripped it. They did everything that everybody somewhat basically was expecting, and then some. And a nice move to the upside, getting rewarded, up about 9% last I looked, 8 or 9%, somewhere in that category. Continued upside for those cruise lines. You look at Carnival and Norwegian, having another really, really nice day. Hotels, Marriott, I mentioned, up about 3% the last I looked. And a couple of those big names, the old names, the names that are in the Dow that oftentimes you forget about some of these names. But how about names like Coca-Cola, Boeing with a really nice, if I go back, which I did before we came on, and look at some of the option paper recently that we have seen in Boeing, it's been really pretty extraordinary because we were down all the way down towards 210. We saw some very bullish option paper coming in, buying the 215 strike calls that expire Friday. Now we look at Boeing and it's been just rocketing to the upside. As a matter of fact, let's jump onto that because I got two unusuals for you. I'm not going to be on the shows today, but I got two unusuals for you and we're going to get out of here. Boeing, I'll go to first. Sorry about that, Glenn. I'm going to go to that one first. So trading about 222 in Boeing, up about 2% on the day. A buyer of 7,000 of the July 23 expiring. That's Friday. 222 and a half calls. Those were going, they started at about $1.15. By the time they finished and got all 7,000, it was about 250. So looking for a little bit more of a move to the upside, and who knows how much further this can go. But if the markets can continue what we are seeing right now, Boeing could be moving enough that these options really could start to explode to the upside. Next, I talked about energy. We talked about the strength. We talked about this bounce in oil. How about Exxon Mobil? Now that name has hit a little bit more frequently than it had been hitting. A lot of the time I've talked about when I see ETFs, I try to find specific names that I think can outperform those ETFs. When I look at the XLE, I oftentimes will look to XOM. Today I'm looking at XOM because that's where we're seeing the unusual. Stock was trading around 57 and a quarter, a buyer of 4,000 of Fridays expiring July 23rd, the 57 and a half calls. So they are right at the money, right where the stock is, and looking for a further move to the upside out of Boeing. Those are going for about 43 cents up to about 53 cents on those options. So two unusuals that are both going to be expiring in a couple of days. That is no longer unusual. That's part of what we are seeing. Matter of fact, when I go out in time, that actually seems like a more unusual type of an unusual option activity than what we are seeing, which is a lot of very, very short-term paper, particularly today, a lot of very short-term paper. You do not want to miss this. So today, after the close, 4 o'clock Eastern time, right as we close, 3 o'clock Central, navigating the earnings through the unusual options activity. This is going to be a great one. You're not going to want to miss this one. Yesterday, it was myself and Bill Johnson. We were talking about some of the educational side of what do we see in the unusual? How do we try to react to some of that? And I can tell you this, when we go back and we look to last Friday and to Monday on those terrible days in terms of the markets getting pushed and crushed to the downside, we were not seeing put buying. What were we seeing? We were seeing call buyers that were coming in on those moves to the downside, and they are now being rewarded to the upside on this bounce that we had starting yesterday and continuing today. I will also say this, discipline does matter, and discipline dictates action. So you've got to have the discipline. That's a big part of what we talk about all the time. I know Bill Johnson and the guys on the educational side absolutely talk about that as well. Folks, have a great day of trading, and we'll see you tomorrow.